I'm Sheana Davis, the Epicurean Connection. I'm here in Sonoma at our warehouse, and we're teaching a weekly Zoom culinary class. So today we're going to make creme de ricotta, which we're going to have two batches. I have one batch that's nearly ready for us to make, but I'm going to show you how to start the batch. Each of you will receive the recipe after the Zoom class. We'll email it out to you within the half hour. And this creme de ricotta cheese I created about 20 some years ago when my daughter was little, and we made it in her preschool. So that I want to give everybody confidence that you can make this recipe. So I teach this same recipe to the YWCA, and I teach the same recipe to Michelin star chefs around the country. So this recipe is adaptable to everyone's kitchen, whether it's a home kitchen or commercial kitchen. And what I really like about this recipe is all the ingredients are EBT, SNAP, and WIC approved. So we start with 1 gallon of whole milk, regular whole milk. Today we're using a local Clover Stornetta in a gallon. It was the one on sale. And we're using whipping cream. So we use 1 gallon of milk and 4 cups of cream. And what we do is we heat the milk and cream to 200 degrees. And at 200 degrees, we're gonna add in 2 cups of distilled white vinegar and 2 teaspoons of salt. We're gonna allow it to rest for 10 minutes. And then I will scoop out, awesome. There we go. So the milk is at 200 degrees now on my left, and I am going to allow it just to simmer back down. Pour in the cream. So again, it's 1 gallon of milk, 4 cups of cream, and I'm gonna heat it to 200 degrees. And at 200 degrees, we'll add in the vinegar and the salt. So this one will be cooking up to 200 degrees. And on the left, I'm gonna give the pot a little wipe down. That's funny. In our classes, whoever boils over the milk has to clean the pot and the burner. So that's my job today after class. Too bad James isn't here, our cheesemaker, to see that. He loves it when one of us boils over. So this milk here is at 200 degrees. Just gonna give it a little wipe so it looks better. Okay, so at 200 degrees, using a whisk, I'm gonna add in 2 teaspoons of salt. Give it a whisk. You wanna resist the temptation to scrape the bottom in case it's scalded, and that way it creates a seal, and you won't get any scalded flavor if by chance you did scald the milk on the bottom, and it happens. And you can make this cheese in a stainless steel pot, in a glass pot, an enamel pot. You wanna refrain from using the nonstick Teflons. They remove the acidity of the vinegar, and you get a lower yield per batch. So I have 2 cups of distilled white vinegar pre-measured. I whisk the milk, and I just gently pour it in. And then I take my ladle. These are the cheese ladles that we have made for us. It's like a skimmer. And if you don't have one of these, you can use a slotted spoon, which works perfect too. So I'm gonna do 1 scoop to get curds. And if you were here, we would be tasting them. So warm, fresh cheese curds. I'm gonna put that in the ladle. I'm gonna cover the pot, allow it to rest for 10 minutes. And I set a good old fashioned timer, 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes, we will have 2 to 3 pounds of cheese. So over here, we're heating the milk to 200 degrees just to show you. And I give it a stir every so often. We're at about 110. And so we'll let that one rest. We'll keep an eye on that. These are the cheesecloths we use to drain our cheese. It's not a traditional cheesecloth like what you buy in the grocery store. This is 200 cotton count, and it's actually called a flour sack. You can order them online. If you're here in Sonoma, we sell them, or Cook's Vineyard Management sells them. And so if you're not in Sonoma, you can order them through Williams Sonoma, the Dollar Tree, your local culinary store. Here in Sonoma, the Sign of the Bear sells flour sacks. You can order them online too. They're great, they're completely reusable. So there's 3 ways that you can clean the cheesecloth after each batch. 1, you can boil it, hand wash all the cheese curds off, put it in a pot, boil it for a couple minutes, hang it air dry, and when it's dry, fold it back up. And I put mine in a Ziploc bag, and that keeps it sanitary for your next use. You can then also, if you have a dishwasher, you can clothespin it in the dishwasher on the rack and run it through the dishwasher cycle. And the last is you can do hot water in your sink and bleach it, and then air dry it, fold it back up, and put it in a sealed unit like a Ziploc. And that way it's fresh and sanitary for your next use. So again, the 200 cotton count, and they're called a flour sack, even though we call them a cheesecloth. We use them in our commercial cheese making. Nicasio Valley Cheese uses them, Valley Ford cheese, Two Rock goat cheese. So most of us commercial cheesemakers love this thickness, and you'll get a higher yield on your cheese by using the flour sacks. So Oz, I'm open to questions if anybody has any. So while I'm waiting for the questions to come on, I want to make sure you all know we have a cheese trail guide here. And if you just Google California cheese trail, it'll come up, and it's a great link that you can download and look at all the different creameries that are located in the state of California. And this cheese map was created by Vivian Strauss of Strauss Family Creamery. She did a fantastic job. So it's a great link to have in your glove box, or have a link on your phone as you're driving to Southern California. You can stop somewhere, go to Half Moon Bay, visit Harley Farms, one of my favorite places to visit in Pescadero. So please do download the cheese link, the Cheese Trail Guide. It's a really fun guide for you to share with your family on road trips. So if you were here in person, we would be tasting this cheese today. So right here, you can see we actually have fresh cheese curds that's stuck to the ladle, and it's showing you that it's actually solidifying. So the curds, the protein is rising to the top, and the whey, the low-fat, non-fat milk is sinking to the bottom. So we should have about 4 to 5 inches of cheese curds in this pot here while the lid is on. You want to resist the temptation to lift the lid off. Each time you lift the lid off, you lose yield of your cheese, about 25%. So you want to definitely resist the temptation to pull the lid off. And I still always have the temptation to pull the lid off. So don't worry if it does happen, it's not the end of the world, but you will get a lower yield per cheese batch. Oz, is there any questions coming in?
There was a question about if the video, or if this will be shareable. And yeah, so we're recording it. And afterwards, Shauna's going to email everybody the recipe card.
Yes, and the link to the video. Will we be able to email the link to the video for them, Oz?
Yes, we shall.
That is fantastic. And then I'll also place it on my website and on our Facebook Epicurean Connection and on our Facebook Sheana Davis. And those spellings will be in the email that we send you, so you can be sure to join our Facebook and follow us. And you're welcome to join our weekly newsletter. It includes recipes. This week was an easy hollandaise sauce. Next week is going to be apple muffins. So we just try and come up with good recipes. Currently we're calling them SIP recipes, as we're all shelter in place and people are starting to dig into their pantry and trying to use up those ingredients that we all have, a jar of applesauce. So if you have any random questions, please feel free to chat it up or send it over email or text to us, because we have about 150 recipes now that we've created for SIP, shelter in place. And all of the ingredients for each of our recipes are EBT, SNAP, and WIC approved. And that doesn't mean that not anyone can make them, everyone can make them. And they're recipes that you and I can enjoy at home, like a black bean chili. Oz, have you tried any of the recipes yet? I know Emily has.
Yes, I have. She's let me try a little bit of each. And they're absolutely fantastic.
I know Emily made the curry vegetable dish. So these recipes are also listed all on, we have a no pay cafe. It was started during the fires, the first round of fires. And at that point, we were feeding people food for no pay. There was no exchange of currency, and we served over 220,000 meals in 3 months. And when this SIP came in place, the request for everybody was, how can we get recipes to cook, especially if people are getting food bank boxes or trying to use up their pantry. So all the recipes are really simple and fun. There's like how to make pancakes 20 ways. So please visit the No Pay Cafe on Facebook. And if you have any trouble looking it up, please do feel free to email me too. Any other questions so far? We have 4 minutes left before we scoop the cheese curd. So to reiterate this recipe, it's 1 gallon of whole milk, 4 cups of whipping cream, and then 2 cups of distilled white vinegar, and 2 teaspoons of salt. So we heat the milk and cream to 200 degrees. Then over here, we're gonna add in the salt and the vinegar. When it gets to 200, it looks to be about 160 at the moment. As a cheesemaker, we can look at the froth and just look at the milk and be able to tell the temperature, because we are constantly checking the temperatures of our milks. So this recipe does not allow substitutions. We have other recipes like how to make chèvre with goat milk. We have a fromage blanc, creme fraiche, a yogurt, a kefir. But this particular recipe does not allow substitutions. It does need to be made with whole milk and cream, and then the vinegar and the salt. But each of these recipes are listed on our website, and you're welcome to use them. And on there is a link where you can order the cheese cultures if you're located within the US or Canada or Mexico. We buy our cultures from New England Cheese Supply Company, and they don't have a minimum, so you can order a set of a packet of cultures and simply make chèvre, creme fraiche, fromage blanc. You can order cheese molds from her. Ricky Carroll, we call her the cheese queen, but she has a cheesemaking 101 book that I strongly recommend if you find yourself really wanting to get into making cheese past a fresh creme de ricotta, chèvre, fromage blanc yogurt. Any other questions so far?
So a quick little reminder, folks, if you want to type in a question, if you're on a computer, down at the bottom, you have a little chat icon. If you're on a phone, you have kind of a similar thing. On iPads, top right, you can click on the little ellipses, the 3 dots in the corner, and you can go to chat, and you can either message me directly privately or message everybody, and we'll read off the questions for you.
So what I'm going to do while we have the 3 minutes left on our timer, and what I find funny, we used to use our iPhone, but we've all learned to ignore our timer on our iPhone. So I ordered timers, and it's amazing how many of the young kids, Oz, like Augie probably, do you guys have a timer in your home? Most households don't actually have timers anymore. So I'm just going to show you that the cheese curd is thickened up enough that it sticks on the ladle, and I'm actually going to have a little taste. And we're just about there for 2 minutes. So I have the cheesecloth, and I have it over a colander and in a bowl, so the whey is going to drain through the cheesecloth, through the colander into the bowl, and that way we don't make any mess, and then we can save the whey. And we have a lot of ways to use your whey. You can make the simple one that we love to make is a potato whey soup. So in the 10 minutes that you're waiting, peel and chop 8 cups of potatoes. After we've scooped the cheese curds out, you put the peeled potatoes in and simmer them for 25 to 30 minutes, and then hand mash them. Taste it, adjust the seasoning, salt, pepper. At that point, I like to add in sauteed leeks or sauteed onions or roasted garlic. One of my favorites actually is a bag of frozen grilled corn from Trader Joe's. So now you have a corn potato chowder. And these recipes are all on our website under the recipe file. Another one of my favorite ways is we just learned how to poach salmon in the whey, and it was delicious. My husband's nodding, yes. And if you're a hunter, if you have wild game, duck, elk, boar, venison, the whey is fantastic to kind of de-game the flavor of the wild meats. And especially if they've been in the freezer for a long time, we have locals that beg for our whey so they can marinate their wild game meats and poultry. So I'm going to check the temperature on this one over here. Looks to be about 180, Ben. My husband, Ben, is doing the video over here, so that's who I say thank you, Ben. We're about 180, 160. So this one is just about ready, 1 minute, and we will be able to scoop the cheese curds out. So what's fun is if you don't have this cheesecloth, a pillow sack, a pillow cover is actually 200 count, most sheets. So if you know how to sew, you can cut a square and make your own cheesecloth out of a sheet, 200 count. And everybody has a colander and a bowl at home. What I love, when we teach this class to the YWCA, we give them a gift card to the Dollar Tree. And you can actually buy a cheese ladle, you can buy a thermometer, a spatula, a whisk, a colander and a bowl, the milk, the vinegar, the cream, and the salt, all for under $25. And it makes me feel really good knowing that a family can now make cheese. And you could also go to a high-end culinary store and buy all the supplies too. But I love that I really want this recipe to always be accessible to everyone. So it's a really fun recipe. I was currently in Dubai teaching this recipe twice last year. And this is hands down my favorite recipe to make with kids, with adults. Actually, sometimes we'll go visit a family friend, and when I look in their refrigerator, I see a gallon of milk and 4 cups of cream, which means we're now making cheese with the kids, right? Ben, how many times has that happened? Yes, but it's fun because the kids are so excited to make cheese. One time when we were in New Orleans, Kate took us to school and we made cheese with her class, and it was really fun. So our timer went off. I'm gonna remove the lid, allow any condensation to drip off. And now using our ladle here, I am gonna take my spatula and just scrape off the cheese curds that we had there so we don't waste them. Looks about a half a cup. And then what I do is the ladle, actually, the curds are so thick that the ladle does not sink in to the curds. And using the ladle like a blade of a knife, I gently cut through the curds and see how much I have, at least 5 inches of cheese curd, because this is a 5-inch width. So this is where you want to be patient and gentle. The more gentle you are with the cheese curds, the higher yield you'll get per batch. So I just use the surface and I allow it to drain with gravity. And I got to resist the temptation to jiggle. I really want to jiggle it. So that's the standing joke in classes, is resist the temptation to jiggle. And then I just gently ladle it into the cheesecloth. And this is a really fun way that you can use the cheese curds. Now, we all have in our refrigerator door multiple jars of jam. Oz, how many jams of jar do you have? Jars of jam that have like 2 teaspoons left?
Oh, I'm
Several?
actually pretty good about that, actually. Probably at least 2.
So we would take those 2 jars, and right now you'd put a dollop of apricot jam and a dollop of blackberry jam. And then when your wheel firms up, you actually have little pools of jam inside the wheels of cheese. So it's a really fun way to do it. One of my favorite ways to serve the cheese is black pepper and grated lemon zest. So I sprinkle black pepper and lemon zest between the ladles of cheese curd, and it allows me to get a really nice flavor that's just one of my all-time favorites. So you can also, once we've ladled all the cheese curds out, and once they're draining, I'm going to show you momentarily, and at home you can scoop to your heart's desire. I'm going to leave it a little in here just so that we can continue on, so that we can see an end result of a round of cheese. So I see I have about 2 pounds in here in the cheesecloth, and I can keep scooping. There's still lots and lots of curds. So if there's liquid on top, you can gently roll it now with the cheesecloth, and it allows it to drain the whey off the top of the surface. And this is when you could sprinkle in more black pepper, lemon zest. This is when you can now, once it's still draining, I'm going to lift it up so you can see the whey. So the whey is still draining off the cheese. And what I do is let gravity take its course. I don't force it. I let it stay fluffy and light in texture. You know, other cheeses you can press and firm, but I like the texture. This gets really nice, pillowy, soft, that you can slice into, and it gets firm, but it's nice texture. So once it's stopped draining, like see if now you notice it's trying to stop draining, it's trying to retain the moisture. This is now when you could put it in a cheese mold on a plate that my husband's gonna hand me. This is Ben. You can wave, Ben. Thank you. So today what we'll do is I'll put it into the cheese mold, and it'll firm up. By the time we answer any of your questions, it'll be firm enough for me to flip out and make into a firm cheese. So I'm just going to scoop it into the little cheese mold. Put it down there. And this is where if you wanted to make like a torta, you could put a layer of fresh blueberries or strawberries. I mean, it's endless. I mean, I love capers, and roasted red peppers are one of my favorites. And so really, this is a great recipe to use up what you have in your pantry. I mean, grated apples in here is wonderful, and apple cheese, and then serve it with a little honey or maple syrup is divine. We like pecans and dried blueberries. So just think about what you have in your pantry. And if you have kids at home, have them choose the flavor, because then they want to eat it because they chose what to do with it. So I love teaching this class to kids. Actually, starting next week, we'll be teaching this to kids within our school district for them to make this creme de ricotta recipe. So while that cheese is resting, I'm just going to scoop out a few more layers of curd here. Anybody have questions so far? Any other additional questions? No questions. Okay, well, I'll keep talking to y'all then. So again, this recipe, we'll send it out to you with the 1 gallon of whole milk, 4 cups of cream, 2 cups of distilled white vinegar, and 2 teaspoons of salt. And this one here is really nice. It's starting to drain. Just going to give it a little pat down so it kind of fits into the mold and shapes. Ben, would you consider putting this in the refrigerator just for a couple minutes? My husband, Ben, is going to go put it in the refrigerator just to expedite it to firm up. How about the back one? And that way I'll be able to flip it out, and I'll drizzle some balsamic vinegar on it, and I'll tell you how delicious it is. And I hope that this recipe will inspire you to make cheese at home. It's really simple. It's really rewarding to have a wheel of cheese, a mold of cheese. And then you have the whey that you can now make a potato whey soup or a corn chowder. Our family's favorite, we call it the BLT. We make a potato soup, and then we top it with bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes, and we call it the BLT soup. It's one of our favorites. In Oz, you know, if you have a whole chicken in your freezer, after you've cooled the whey overnight, you know, you don't want to put your meat or poultry in a hot whey. You want to cool it down, but soak the whole chicken or chicken breast, frozen chicken legs, and they plump up like a buttermilk chicken. Is that a question there, Oz, on the screen?
Yes, it is. Can you use ultra pasteurized milk?
You can use ultra pasteurized milk. You get a little less lower yield, but you can, yes. So, you know, what I tell people around the country is they can use Costco whole pasteurized, ultra pasteurized milk. If you have access to raw milk, you can use raw cow milk, and that's available at a lot of local natural food stores. So as long as it's a whole milk, and you can use raw, pasteurized, or ultra pasteurized. It's a good question. Thank you. Okay, we're at 200 degrees right here. The way I can tell is the froth. So I'm going to turn the flame off. I'm just going to double check the temperature. Ben, we're at 200. So at 200 degrees, I turn the flame off. That's the most important so it doesn't boil over like I demonstrated earlier. I sprinkle in your 2 teaspoons of salt. Give it a whisk. And then over here, I'm going to stir in the vinegar. Oz, I might have to bring you a wheel of cheese later today.
I'm not going to say no.
No, I don't think you should. I'll give it one stir with my ladle just to confirm that, well, and we have cheese curds arriving already. So I'll put it over here on the cheesecloth. I'll cover it and I'll set the timer and I'll repeat my steps later. You guys have all seen the steps, but just so you know, when it hits 10 minutes, we'll scoop it all out, put it in the cheesecloth, allow it to drain. And before we flip out our mold, you can use mini muffin tins. Is really fun. Once the cheese has stopped draining, you fill the little mini muffin molds with the cheese, maybe put a blueberry or a strawberry on top of each one, put them in your refrigerator for an hour, pull it out, and now you have little crotons of cheese with a fruit in it. You can use a loaf pan, like if you're gonna bake pumpkin bread, but rather line it with saran wrap, gently pat the cheese cultures in, or the cheese curds, pardon me, and then put it in the refrigerator for 1 hour, pull out, flip it over. Now you can slice it for sandwiches. Makes a great tomato and creme de ricotta salad. If you have the grande muffin pans, those make nice little, basically domes. So you don't have to purchase the cheese molds if you don't want. You can use equipment that you actually already have at home, like a muffin pan. These make the best. Fill it with the cheese curds, put it in the refrigerator for an hour or two, and then flip it out and you have a little dome. And what's really nice about this recipe is you can freeze the whey, so you can store it in containers in your freezer, label and date it. So you can freeze the whey. You can also freeze the cheese if you find it's too much. I tried to cut this recipe down to the smallest amount possible. And then I can make little domes, and then I put them in a Tupperware, and I'm able to freeze them and pull them out later. You can put them in little mini mason jars or large mason jars and do a torta. This one is fun, the 2-cup mason jar, because once you put it in here and you flip it out, you can slice it and layer it with pesto, tapenades, your choice. So really try to use up the equipment that you already have in your own home. Little clear bowls, make a nice little creme de ricotta base and put some savory chopped olives and spread for a baguette. Ben, would you mind getting the cheese out of the refrigerator? So our cheese should be firm enough now for us to flip out, and then I'll drizzle it with some balsamic and show you the final round of cheese. And if you were at home, you'd let it sit in the refrigerator a little longer so it firms up to slice, but I wanna be able to show you the end result today. And then when you make this recipe at home, I look forward to getting a review back from you and how you have enjoyed making cheese. And if you have pictures that you've made the cheese, please feel free to share them on our Facebook page, the Epicurean Connection or Sheana Davis. And we will give you credit for it. And I love getting pictures of families making cheese. It makes my day. So I have the cheese mold here, and I have the plate, and I'm just gonna gently flip it over. It's a little soft still, but I think you'll get the idea that if it stayed in the refrigerator for another hour, it would be firm enough to slice. Right now it's perfect for serving with a baguette. If I had a baguette and olive oil, but what I have is balsamic. I have a local tall grass olive oil, and tall grass olive oil is produced right here in Sonoma Valley by Nancy Lilly. And so I'm just gonna give it a nice drizzle, and I'll show you this on the video. And then here we have our own balsamic vinegar that I'm gonna just give it a nice drizzle. And if you're in Sonoma, the vinegars we have in our little cheese gourmet shop here, we're closed until SIP is over, but you can sign up for our email and we'll let you all know when you can come back and visit. And Oz and Emily and Augie have been here. We have a monthly open house, fresh bread. We have a bread baker come. We have vegetable CSA, so it's a lot of fun on the first Saturdays here. So with that said, we have a beautiful plate of creme de ricotta. Can you all see that there, Oz? The creme de ricotta drizzled with balsamic and olive oil, and serve it with some baguette. I'd scramble that in an omelet. I could actually still remold it and firm it up, keep it in the refrigerator for another hour, be able to slice it for this afternoon. So before we hang up this home cheesemaking class, does anyone have any further questions?
Yeah, there was one more. Can we cut the recipe in half or fourths?
You can try it, but I have had a hard time once. It's like your grandma when she makes the big tub of marinara sauce or, you know, the mole sauce. They swear it has to be made in the larger batch. This was the smallest that I could get it to where you actually get end result. But, you know, please feel free to try it. If you try it, the recipe is easy to cut in half. You get a little less yield, obviously, but if that's how much cheese you'd like to make at home, then please do. It does cut in half if you'd like, and it does go up to 5 times. We've made it in a big pot where we need to make 5 wheels for a catering event or a big class, so you can go up to 5 times on the recipe. Like Cochon in New Orleans, they make this by the 5 gallons. Good question. Thank you very much.
And how long does it last for?
It has a 2-week shelf life in your refrigerator, and otherwise you can freeze it. It is a fresh product, so you want to definitely eat it within the 2 weeks and keep it covered in a Tupperware or a container. And, you know, if you're not sure how to use it, I recommend making a couple different shapes and then putting it in the freezer. And again, my favorite ones are the mini muffins, because when you pull them out, they thaw within 10 minutes, and you can put 2 or 3 on a salad, put 2 or 3 in an omelet, put a couple on a cup of soup. You know, last minute invite and you got to bring a appetizer, pull a half dozen out, drizzle them with olive oil and vinegar. You're off to go to a party with a nice cheese board that you made your own cheese. So it's a great question. 2-week shelf life or freeze it.
All right, one
Any
more
other
question. Yeah,
Please.
can you still make this if you don't have cream?
You really do need the cream. The milk doesn't have enough protein fat in it with the vinegar. So if you want to make it without the cream for a lower fat, less cream, you'd need to get a culture and make more of a fromage blanc. And you would order those through New England Cheese Supply. If you just Google New England Cheese Supply, I would recommend ordering the fromage blanc cultures. It's really easy. You heat the milk just like this, only to 86 degrees. You add in the culture packet. I actually double culture her cultures. I like a little firmer cheese. Let it rest overnight. Scoop it out into your cheesecloth. And now you have a fromage blanc that has less cream than the creme de ricotta. Yes, please.
All right, there's a thank you from Kaylee Buck. Thank you so much for this. Inspired to make cheese.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. And every Wednesday at 11 is a cheese class or a culinary class. And we'll film them every week here at 11 o'clock at the Epicurean Connection. And we will gladly do a follow-up email with the video and the recipe for you all to enjoy. So I'd like to thank you all for being part of the class. Thank you, Oz, for being the IT and director. Thank you, Ben, for filming. And thank you all for joining us today. We'll hope to have you join us next Wednesday at 11. Thank you again.